Well, good evening. I call the regular meeting of the Ames Conference Board to order. Thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. And we'll start out with the roll call.
Ames City Council.
Present.
Here. Story County Board of Supervisors.
Here.
Ames Community School District. Here. Nevada Community School District.
Here.
Gilbert Community School District. And United Community School District.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 2, motion approving minutes of December 14th, 2021. Has everyone received those and reviewed them? If there are no objections, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So,
Moved by Ames, seconded by Board of Supervisors. Any discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 3, resolution approving appointment of Nancy Halverson to Board of Review. As contained in the packet, we had a resignation, and Nancy has agreed to serve. Any questions? If not, entertain a motion approving the appointment of Nancy Halverson to Board of Review.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved to seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
City Council.
Aye.
Board of Supervisors.
Aye.
School Districts. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now move on to item 4, discussion of city assessors budget proposals. Deb Shildroth, and she's assisted by Dwayne tonight, and trust everyone has had a chance to look them over. Deb, do you want to go ahead and hit the high points and answer any questions?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Conference Board. Dwayne Pitcher, our City Finance Director, is with me here tonight, and we will be providing the information to you and answering your questions. And we're going to start by talking about the tables that are tables 1 and 2 in the report that talk about the assessed values by class and the taxable values by class. And Dwayne will kick off that conversation.
Thanks. I won't be able to provide the same type of market evaluation that an assessor does, but we certainly have spent some time looking over the information and can provide you with some of the high points. This, of course, is the value as of January 1st, 2021, and that's what we use to set the tax rate for the budget that's coming up in 22-23. So for this taxing body, that's tonight. For the rest of you, you're going to see that in the near future. Some items of note, if you look at the top table, that's assessed values, and those, for the most part, except for the bottom line, the railroad utilities and the gas and electric valuation, those are all set by the assessor. And you can see each class of property was up by some amount. So all classes are up in assessed value. Commercial was up the highest amount at about 12.5%. So that's the assessed value. That's the total value, not rolled back, not any adjustments made, and those are set by the assessor. The rollback and some of those other items are set by the state. So if you look down below, you'll see ag land and buildings that has a certain rollback rate. Residential's about 56% right now, so that rolls that back to that lower number. So we do see increases in most class, but I'll point out the multi-residential, and that's a class that was made about 7 years ago with a stair-stepped reduction in value each year. This will be the last year. It dropped down about 6% a year. So the reason that has a lower taxable value than assessed is the last application of that rollback. I'm not exactly sure how the assessor is going to do that next year, but for all intents and purposes, that class will go away. That will move up with residential, and that will float with that rollback rate going forward. So you might see a big bump in residential next year. That's just a movement in class. As far as revaluation, there was fairly modest revaluation both in the commercial and in industrial, or commercial and residential property. Commercial being up, if I could grab that sheet, I believe around 6%, and this is on average. Residential, and I think you've seen what's going to happen recently in residential values, but that was up 3.4% on revaluation this year. Multi-res was up about 5.2%. then those all get subjected to the rollbacks, and that it's 90% for the commercial and industrial, and then, like I said, about 56% this year for the residential property. The railroads, gas, less electric, those utilities, those are all valuations provided to us by the state. Any questions on this? Hopefully we can answer.
Any questions for Dwayne? Thank you, Dwayne.
Thanks, Dwayne. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the proposed budget for fiscal year 22-23. The explanation starts on page 12 of your annual report. The actual budget itself is attachment A. And the mini board did meet a couple of weeks ago, so we did review this with them at that time. And so we'll go ahead and just start with the salary line items there for the assessor and deputy and staff. The assessor salary on your sheet there, we had left it the same as currently as budgeted this year. And bumped up the deputy salary by about 5%. So we're looking at that combination of cost of living and merit increase around 5% for next fiscal year. You'll see a 13% reduction in staff salary, and that is due to a position, the administrative assistant position. That position's been vacant since June of 2020, and through the staff report that was provided by the Iowa Department of Revenue when they did their review back in August, September. That recommendation of the staff structure did not include that administrative assistant, and so that position is not included in this budget. Then we've got longevity, overtime, benefits, board of review. The bump there is due to doubling the hourly compensation that's given to those members, and it's set at $35 an hour, and that's to attract and retain members for the work that they do. They put in a lot of time and a lot of hours. Health insurance is budgeted to go up about 7%, so that's the city health insurance benefits, and that's the approximation that was provided to us by Human Resources. So there, the total proposed for fiscal year 22-23 is $985,025, which is approximately a 3.6% reduction from the current year. Any questions or comments on that section?
Questions or comments?
Deb, am I right in thinking that when we hired the last assessor, there was some negotiation on the salary amount for that position based on moving to Ames or not, and various other factors?
Yes, so I wasn't directly involved in that hiring process, but I do recall there being some negotiation, and consideration was also given to the annual salary survey that's done with assessors and assessors' offices throughout the state. So that was taken into consideration as well.
So is there a possibility that this budgeted amount is not going to be the amount that we actually pay when we hire the new assessor?
Correct. Yes.
Other questions? Well, board members, to Gloria's question, and as you're aware, it's in the report, the salaries now are being paid by the city, and so we're kind of recalibrating and trying to follow job descriptions that are set at the city level. And Gloria, you're correct. The salary was much less than what is published in the budget, and so Deb and I talked about it, and I talked to a couple of the mini board members, and that I was just thinking that maybe to submit to the board members is, do we want to reduce that to just recalibrate it like down to $140,000 for sake of discussion? That's kind of the midpoint, I believe, in the department head range and gives some latitude for some increase. And the same for the deputy assessor. That is significantly more than a midpoint for the classification for that job, and also is quite a bit higher than what is being paid on average, around the state for that particular position. Also, and I think we talked about possibly $110,000 or $112,000. Again, that can fluctuate. It could be lower or a little higher. The hope is that the new assessors that we hire, could find and hire a deputy assessor, and then that can be part and parcel of it. But to try and set realistic salary ranges versus giving the impression that the board is prepared to go ahead and pay these levels might give a false sense of expectation. But again, this is a maximum budget, so you don't have to just thinking about trying to set it. And I think, and we've talked about this for a number of years, trying to really kind of get the you get a good management system going here. We got a position that's been eliminated, so I think we're really starting to see some trimming of the budget itself to be delivering exceptional value service wise to our taxpayers, and being also fiscally responsible. But I just throw that out for your consideration and for discussion.
I have a question, Mayor. So how does that fit? I think you're kind of alluding to that too, just the general kind of compensation range. If you lower it here, does that, was like Ames up in the higher end where this puts you more at the midpoint, or is it going to be a year or 2 years now you're going to have to do a huge catch up?
I think,
Yeah,
Deb, you were part of that salary survey.
Yeah, yep. So, so what we did with with all the positions in the assessor's offices, we put them into the classification that the city has, the classification and compensation schedule. So the assessor salary is in the range, same range as department heads, and then the deputy assessor salary is in the same range as assistant directors. And then in looking and taking that information then and looking at what the latest salary survey indicates for those positions, it's kind of all over the board, but the 140 does sit within the range of similar city assessors as well as the larger counties. So we looked at that as well.
Gotcha. So that was kind of my question is then, and then you also looked outside of the city
Oh, yeah.
to do some comparables.
Yes. Yep.
Actually, I think that there's a few assessors that are county or city assessors that are above the 140, but their longevity is quite lengthy in terms of their position. I say the vast majority are below or significantly below the 140 amount. So,
Yeah, that survey takes a lot of things into consideration, the experience, longevity, number of employees in the office, number of parcels that's in the jurisdiction that the assessor is responsible for, so a variety of information.
the other option is the board can decide to leave it as is and then give some flexibility when you hire the assessor, but also when they're looking for a deputy assessor, make it known we're not looking to, this is not going to potentially be the entry salary. It could be significantly lower, and then you recalibrate next year, essentially. So there's a couple options to look at. Just wanted to bring it up because I know that's been a topic of conversation, and we're trying to get this, and there's a tremendous inroads been made, under Deb and Diane's, leadership and working together. And the position for assessor closes on Friday. And we have, it sounds like, a number of people have submitted applications for that position. So we'll be reviewing.
At the previous posted salary range, or was there no salary?
There was a salary range posted.
Yes,
There
yes, at the current one that fits within the city's classification system. Mhm.
Not at this level.
Not at this level.
The high range, the high end is 162 and some change.
One of the concerns is if they come in at 162, they're automatically going to be capped
Mhm.
and they can't go any higher. And so it's all going to be it will be just merit,
Mhm.
or is it merit and COLA? How's that?
Yeah,
But they can't get anything above that. So
right.
So I guess, I'm sorry, I have another question, if that's okay.
go ahead.
So just for clarification, so you advertised for the salary range of up to 162, but if they see the budget here and see 140, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, that would just look a little confusing to me to say,
That's
okay,
fair.
we've advertised one, but this is what you're setting, potentially setting for a salary.
And typically, when the city budgets for salaries for positions like this, they're looking at, they budget at midpoint, thinking, they're going to get somebody that comes in with, experience and then in education. And so normally they're not starting out at the very low end of the salary range, but they're closer to the midpoint, and that then gives a little bit of negotiation room. If it's around the midpoint, whether it's a little bit above or a little bit below, but we look at the midpoint.
So what is the salary range that's being proposed? Up to what you are proposing, Mayor, up to 140?
I was just suggesting that the 140 might be something that would be entered into. That's about, actually, I think the previous one who was short duration was, I think, a
Was
little less than
130.
that, actually.
Mhm.
But Supervisor Head has an excellent point, and that is, we don't send the wrong message either. So that we don't want to send confusion to people who are candidates also.
Right.
Again, if they make less, then at least we've authorized up to that amount of money, and we can recalibrate next year when the salaries are set. Let's do this. If everyone wants to leave it just as is, we'll leave it that way. There's no motion necessary. We'll just go ahead and move forward and keep on going through the budget unless there's a motion to make any changes. All right, we'll leave it as is and keep on going.
All right. And then keep the deputy assessor salary at the same.
Yeah, I think that when the assessor is hired, we can have a conversation with them about what's expected for salary ranges for the deputy assessor. Okay.
All right, thank you. On to other office expenses. So a few things to highlight here. Employee mileage and expenses, the reduction there is because we've got the assessor, deputy assessor, and the 2 residential appraisers that receive what's called a mileage stipend. And so they're provided this amount, a certain amount every month that goes towards the expense of using their vehicle for the purposes of business. And so that was moved up into taxable fringe benefits. So that's why that went up. And then what's paid out here is then any mileage that is accrued when they're attending a training or education event. That's for any staff, but it would also include the deputy assessor, the assessor, and residential appraisers. Let's see. We've got the data processing services and major software, so that's a modest 4% increase. But that box below, I'd like to bring your attention to the 4th one down, the Harris Computer Systems, ProVal. So ProVal is the current software that the assessor's office is using for their property information. And that's the software that we're going to be phasing out because we're going through the data conversion to move towards the new CAMA system, which is Vanguard. It's a Vanguard product. And if we have time yet this evening, we've got a member of the assessor's staff that is leading that project and give you a quick overview where we're at with that conversion. But we did budget ProVal for next year because the conversion takes some time and we've got to continue using the old system while we're moving towards the new system. So that's why that was still budgeted for next year. But hopefully after fiscal year 23, that's an expense that will be dropped. On utilities, 16.8% increase. So that's a number that's provided to us by the city that we plug in. So increase in utilities, it's part of the office expense. And equipment and machinery purchases. So that's primarily computers. We're working through the replacement of computers and some other equipment that just needs to be phased out and replaced with new. Haven't done that in a couple of years, so that's budgeted a little bit higher. And then the last line item there, management services / contingency. So that's over 1,300% increase. So what is there includes the services that are included in the memorandum of understanding that was approved last March. So that was part of what directed the transition of the payroll from the county to the city of Ames. And then with that are charges or services that will be provided to the city assessor's office from human resources and finance in terms of payroll and recruitment with HR employee onboarding. Those are things that had been provided before, but now with the payroll sitting with the city, those are services that we can charge for. And those charges are based on number of employees in an office. So that's the same kind of formula that HR and finance uses for other city departments. So that will be ongoing. That expense will be an ongoing expense. So that brings our total office expenses to $300,756. So that's about an 8% increase. And then our total payroll and office expenses is $1,285,781. So a little less than a 1% drop over the current year. We drop down to a couple of other line items, the district court cases. So this would be legal services that we use to help address cases that are taken to district court and appeals. And because of it being a non-valuation year, that line item drops. It's one that fluctuates, but we do anticipate it dropping this next year. And then the last line item is that CAMA conversion project, the Vanguard project. So in June of 2021, the city assessor's office, and this was covered in the memo that went out to you earlier today, the city assessor's office entered into a contract with Vanguard and purchased all of the software, training, and consultation. They entered into a 5-year contract. And then we were notified in September that that amount was on the lower side and that there should be additional funds budgeted for next fiscal year. It's not affecting the contract currently, but they advised us to plan for another $40,000 for next fiscal year. So that's part of that cost. And then the remaining cost, the $3,200, would go to Schneider, which hosts the Beacon website that you look up property. And they need a one-time fee to connect our Vanguard system to Beacon. So that's what that $3,200 is. So total expenses, $1,343,981, which is about a 1.4% increase overall. Be happy to answer any questions.
You want to just touch briefly on the Vanguard, that the length of the contract that has been entered into and what the board should expect to see or not see in the future for fees for that?
Yeah, because of the way everything was purchased in June of 21, that total amount was $165,732. So the $40,000 in addition to that next year will cover then the contract through 2026. And then, so we'll need to be then looking at budgeting in that year prior for additional fees that will need to maintain the system and probably enter into another contract. I don't know at this point if that will be an annual contract or a multi-year contract. But then that will be going forward to maintain the system and include any updates it may have. But it's from what we're seeing so far, it's a pretty robust software program, and will hopefully offer a lot of efficiencies for the office that we haven't seen for a while. So it's pretty exciting to be moving in this direction, but it is taking quite a bit of staff time just to get through the conversion. So I truly appreciate them diving in and helping with the conversion.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. I would entertain a motion approving the recommendations of the assessor's report. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion?
Did that need to be seconded by another one of the bodies?
Yeah.
Duly noted. Thank you. Moved by city council, seconded by school board. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Entertain a motion to receive proposed budget. Adoption of budget will occur after the hearing is held. Is there a motion to receive the proposed budget
So moved.
Second.
for supervisors and city council? Thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. And I entertain a motion to set 6 p.m. on February 22nd, 2022 as the date of public hearing on proposed FY 2022-2023 city assessor's budget.
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And Deb, we'll take just a couple of minutes here. If you want to introduce Lisa, she is our key data person, and love to hear an update. So you'll want to introduce her and her
Sure.
role.
So we have Lisa Henschel. She is the database manager in the city assessor's office, and she is taking the lead on the Vanguard conversion project, and I can just give a quick overview of where that is.
So last Thursday, the people from Vanguard came and they introduced us. They did a real quick training, and they introduced us to how we can log in for the test portion of our cycle for a conversion from a different software package. The conversion was remarkably clean. There are, of course, issues, and we are crippled by the lack of staff time and commercial appraisal experience. We are hoping that we will be able to begin the second round of testing around our busiest time of the year, the assessment roll and board review period.
Yeah, and in addition to that, then what we're doing for the expertise that's needed with the commercial, and part of it is we're using Mel Obank, who's has an agreement with the city assessor's office. He's been providing the commercial appraisal services. We've extended that contract to also include residential appraisal services until we get an appraiser hired. And he met with Lisa and Chris today and was going over a variety of things. Mel is familiar with Vanguard, and the Vanguard product is what's used throughout the state. And so it's well known to assessors. And so I think that's a plus as we look at hiring a new city assessor, that we're moving in that direction. But we do have the capability of having some expertise as we go through the conversion. And hopefully we could have somebody hired by the time the second part of the conversion happens. It goes in 3 rounds. And so we're in round 1, and that's what staff is reviewing, and then we'll move into the second round. So Lisa's doing a great job.
Any questions?
Thank you, Lisa. I know that there's a lot of data that's going in and a lot of data going back, and appreciate your efforts, and heard lots of positive things about your efforts in the office. So thank you for your efforts.
It's a staff effort.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we didn't have our staff, we wouldn't be able to do any of it.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate you coming.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right. Conference board comments. Anything from city council?
I'd just like to thank the staff and Deb and Diane for working through this interim period and the transition. It's very important for us to keep moving forward on it, and they're helping us do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces and parts and pieces right now. Board of Supervisors? Any comments?
No.
School Board? Ames? Nevada? All right. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Yo.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Good evening. We call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council to order. Welcome, council, and those in attendance. Did get a request if council could make sure you get as close to the microphone as possible so the sound system is picked up. They appreciate that. First item on the agenda is consent agenda. Is there any item that council wishes to pull tonight? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve.
Move consent?
Second.
Moved and second. Thank you. Roll call.
Spencer.
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corey Aaron.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Dee Hanson.
Aye.
Thank you. Council, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, we're working from an amended agenda, and there's just one small change, and that is under item 19. Says staff report regarding request to review zoning requirements for ground floor. It says had said commercial and should be residential. So that's the one change. So, all right, moving on to public forum. I have several individuals requesting to address council. So we'll start with Susie Peter. And if you could try and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, we'd appreciate it.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you once again, addressing you about my apprehensiveness with the Lincoln Way mixed-use proposal. In early December, I shared with you my concerns about the proposed submission. Those concerns remain. The driving force for the developers' purchasing of many thriving tax-paying businesses along that stretch of Lincoln Way appears to be the desire for a convention center. We all thought we already had one, the Gateway Center. In a town of about 64,000, of whom approximately 54,000 of us are permanent residents, we already have 31 hotel motels plus any number of B&Bs. So my original concern stands. A complete occupancy rate study must be completed before any building plans should be proceeded. This is foundational. My second concern deals with the design itself. The 2040 Ames Comprehensive Plan speaks of, quote, pedestrian and bicycle scale, unquote. When one looks at the renderings submitted, you will note that most of the structures facing Lincoln Way are built right onto the sidewalk. And the sidewalk is right next to Lincoln Way, that heavily trafficked Lincoln Way. There's no grassy right-of-way separating the sidewalk from Lincoln Way. So there is no bicycle or pedestrian safety in that plan. And just where does the accumulation of snow and slush go from Lincoln Way? Onto that sidewalk? And where does the snow from that sidewalk go? Next to the building that abuts it, leaving less walkway, safe walkway for pedestrians? I cannot see that community connectiveness is considered in this plan, and that community connectiveness is also written in that 2040 plan. All of that punctuates the concern that I voiced in December. There is far too much concrete, i.e., many structures for the spatial footprint. I have spent over 50 years of my life teaching and supporting creative design. I strongly support innovative, creative ideas. We live in a town with a first-rate university, which has a great architecture and design department, college. How embarrassing to have this final submitted design as the strongest design possible. I strongly urge you to take advantage of the talent that exists here and start again with an architect who understands and can design for the space limitations of this site and can design for whatever the actual needs this community has. I urge you to give consideration to those 2 points. First, a complete occupancy rate study and a design that fits with the given spatial needs and needs of our community. You can't have that second one without the first. That is fundamental. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Sue Ravenscroft.
Thank you. Sue Ravenscroft. My address is 455 Westwood. I might take this off. Ames 50014. Susie Petra is helping me passing out some selected pages from 2 background studies on economic development. A couple of weeks ago, I heard something on NPR about Sioux City's remarkable downtown economic development and how successful it was. My ears perked up. I've never been to Sioux City. I don't even know exactly where it is, but I was really curious about their economic development. So I Googled Sioux City economic development and saw the report, those words. I clicked on it, and what you're seeing is a couple pages from that report. If you look at page 3, there's a table of contents that shows separate analyses for retail growth, for residential growth, and for office growth. Better and better, just like what's being proposed in Ames. So under each topic, I saw 2 key words, either existing inventory or current inventory. They did a plan that involved looking at what facilities actually exist now. If you go to page 3 of that Sioux City, you see the table of contents. So they think that before engaging in a major development, they should look at current supply, current usage, current populations, current vacancy rates, all the sort of supply and demand information that's helpful, including growth rates. Then they considered local environment and business conditions and estimate how much demand could change under varying assumptions. And if you look, and I know you can't do all this while I'm talking, because otherwise I'd be up here for half an hour, but if you look at pages 48 through 51, you can see how they think about one sector, the retail sector. So in other words, they think and they plan very carefully, and they base their proposals on detailed information about local conditions and how those conditions could reasonably be expected to change. What has Ames done that's analogous in its planning for the Lincoln Way project? It's embarrassing, people. I could find nothing on the web that I would call background planning like was done in this report. I did, of course, read the full report from Decision Innovation Solutions, the firm that we hired to prepare our application to the state. I also looked at the report they prepared for Newton, and it follows exactly the same template. I could find no background data in those reports like what Sioux City has provided. Instead, DIS relied on the square footage figures given to them by the developer. And they say that on page 22 of our report, the Ames report. That's not an independent measure. Then they use, and this is on page 21, a newspaper association business survey that shows average sales per square foot of different kinds of facilities. In the Newton report, the same firm explains more background on that report. It was done in 2005. They've adjusted it for a single inflation number they use for the 16 years. They multiply those sales times the square footage given by the developer to get an estimate of what the revenues are going to be in the Lincoln Way project. They don't do an inventory of comparable space. They don't, like Susie said, they don't look at whether this hotel, among other things, is needed. They don't look at current users. They don't look at vacancy rates. They don't look at population growth. They don't think about other businesses. They don't think about what it means that we live relatively close to Des Moines. So then they use these really dubious numbers and create some deeply flawed financial statements that I've already talked to council about and the problems with those. I believe Ames deserves better than this. I believe Ames deserves a plan that includes the same kind of comprehensive, thorough, thoughtful background that Sioux City worked with. They had that available. You deserve better because this project is too big and too important to base on such incomplete and clearly self-interested data that are not even remotely independently generated. So I ask that you slow down, get some reliable data, use that to develop thoughtful projections about future needs before you commit to anything further on this project. And I know you're thinking the developer agreement has to be done in a month. I hope you don't. I hope you postpone and wait on that. I know the state needs something, but I hope you don't commit to anything firm. And I would be glad to spend way more time than this with anybody who has questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Hector?
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
My name is Hector Arbuckle, 2503 Bruner Drive, and I'm here right now representing the Ames Climate Action Team. So as we move forward with the climate action planning process, currently we haven't finished the process, of course, but the Ames Climate Action Team requests that the city work to ensure that in this CIP that we are currently looking at, that we make sure that we do not commit ourselves to any to locking in future emissions, and so that we can at least so that by the time that we get our Ames Climate Action Plan finished, that we haven't locked in any emissions that we're then later going to have to work to fix. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wants to address council under public forum on any items not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public forum. And we'll move on to item number 15, 2022-2027 Capital Improvement Plan. Steve and Dwayne?
Yes, so last week we introduced our 5-year plan to you, which is a program of some of our major capital or major facilities that we're trying to lay out for you, infrastructure improvements. Today we offer an opportunity for the public to respond to it. I know it's not been that long of a time, so I want to assure people if they're not here tonight or they want to add some comments to the council, that'll be fine, because you will not be asked to approve the capital improvement plan into our final budget wrap-up night of February 8th, I believe it is. So there's still time to give input, and that's what we're looking for tonight, if anybody wants to respond to our plan.
All right. We'll open up public input on this item. Hector?
Hello, do I read my address again?
I think that we have your address. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much for this CIP. And I have some comments on it. So my first question is on, or my first input is on the streets. So I and many other people at Iowa State do not own a car. And I get around the city by walking, biking, and using the bus. And a lot of the streets here in Ames are rather hostile to pedestrians. So within the capital improvements plan, there are a number of projects to increase a number of projects to increase capacity of the roadways. Although there are also projects to work on pedestrian connectivity and bike connectivity. And so what I would like to ask is that the city work to officially prioritize pedestrian and bike connectivity and abilities above automobile capacity and level of service, and try to take the money that we might be spending to respond to future traffic projections and instead use that money to improve our connectivity and safety for cyclists and pedestrians, so that we can redirect some of the automobile trips to cyclists and pedestrians. So instead of capacity expansions, modality expansions. In terms of the sewage system, I noticed something in the on the page of the sewage repairs. So it seems like in 2012 there was a report that the city of Ames had about 25 million in immediate repairs needed that needed to be done within 5 years, it seems. But according to the CIP, we're not going to finish those repairs until around 2028. My question is, why hasn't the city been able to repair and maintain our existing sewage network within the amount of time that it was supposed to be maintained? And my question with that leads into is there a way that we can figure out how to either invest in our current sewage network to ensure that it does not degrade? And also, as the city continues to expand, how are we going to ensure that we are able to maintain the infrastructure that we're going to be building? I believe that was all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hector. Anybody else want to address council under capital improvement plan? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Closing comments and direction. Nope. Wayne, Nancy, anything for you tonight?
Nothing tonight.
So the process again, just Steve, for a review for everybody, is we're going to take final action on this on February 8th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for coming.
Are we going to answer Hector's question about the sewer?
Do you have the ability to answer the question on the sewage, the repairs?
Was that,
I'm not sure what referring to. Do you know what page he's referring to?
well, just that his question was that a few years ago, we said we had a 5-year plan for repairing a bunch of sewer stuff, and it's taken us longer than that 5 years. Is that a function of like available staff time to work on the issue, or cost of?
I don't know the reference to, we
Okay.
had 25 or 20 years to get something done or whatever.
5 years.
5 years. I don't know, but that's what the part of the capital improvements plan. It's our professional staff's opinion how we improve the system. The operating budget shows you how we believe we can maintain the system. Now, projects are delayed sometimes because sometimes we rely on federal funds that come in later. Sometimes we have to acquire land, as you know. That doesn't always go as smoothly as we'd like to purchase land. Sometimes that backs the project up for a year. I'm not sure it's necessarily staff issues per se. Whenever we're short of staff, we mostly use outside consulting firms. So I don't know if they're necessarily always keep up with the schedules we say. We always are optimistic how long it's going to take to do a project. Weather intervenes on projects. So it's not a precise science whatsoever. But we are certainly dedicated to providing all of our services, and that's what the excellent services, the infrastructure. That's why we invest $280 million into our infrastructure, to make sure we keep up with, or we manage it, keep up with it, and your operating budget is the way to support the maintenance of it. That's why you'll see in the future both water and sewer increases to the customer to help us do that too. We need the financial backing to accomplish both the capital improvements and the ongoing operations. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I think it's fine. Yeah.
I think the other thing too, Steve has shared before, is that the first year in the capital improvement plan is basically locked in, and the next 4 are essentially progressions and a plan, but sometimes priorities have to be reestablished as well too. And Hector, if you want to just email us more specifics in terms of page numbers and cross referrals. Pardon me?
It's on page 72 of the CIP.
72.
Oh yeah, over 10 years, starting in 15, 16. Construction costs have inflated. Extensions to that time frame.
Yep, there's all different factors that come on. I wouldn't be able to keep on schedule.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sometimes we have to do environmental studies, you know, and archaeological studies and
And is this the same funding that we would draw from to make improvements at the water pollution control?
but these are the sanitary sewer system. This is the distribution system, if you will, or the
Right.
collection system. on
But
this
I mean,
one.
like we've had sort of new requirements for nutrient reductions at the.
Oh, John's here.
plant.
Maybe, John, do you want to speak to this one? I don't know. I don't want to put him on the spot.
And I didn't know if maybe that, having those nutrient reduction requirements would
Oh,
take
see
away
what-
from the funding that we would use for this maybe, or reprioritize it.
Yeah, this is state revolving loan funds that we've been using for the last several years to do the sanitary sewer system improvements. But that'd be a different category than
Okay.
what they do for the nutrient reduction projects.
Okay, thank you.
But the interest that we've had from the sanitary projects we've used to fund some smaller storm sewer projects.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Move on to item number 16, scope of services and a request for proposals for hiring a construction management firm for the indoor aquatic center. Keith?
All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. So just as at your November 23rd meeting, council did approve using a construction manager for this project. It is new to the city. We haven't done this before. Rather, we used a lot of times architect bid and then a general contractor. So just as a reminder, the construction manager acts as an extension of the owner's staff. The owner holds all the individual contracts and competitively bids them. The CM is involved in the design process, which hopefully will reduce some minimized change orders. It's a collaborative team approach between the architect, the construction manager, and the city, as well as the contractors. Hopefully, the increased cost of a CM was offset by the elimination of the general contractor's markup to the construction bid amount. And then, the city will assume, associated or the risk associated with any increase of costs of materials. So there's just a few of the highlights of going with the CM route. Now, we did put the, scope of services together, and those were included in the packet. And just to go through a few of the items, the Rfp Submittal Schedule, we would issue the RFP tomorrow, January 26th. Proposals would be due February 23rd. In between that time, we would have a pre-conference, pre-submittal conference, and then the potential submitters could pose questions, and we could clarify anything in the scope of services or in the RFP. So we did list city objectives. There's a whole list of them: sustainability, durability of structures, quality, and other items. We've identified the role of the city and identified that city will not increase its staff to manage this project. We have identified the role of the construction manager and listed some general things for them. We do talk about compensation, and compensation is broken into 3 different categories: pre-construction phase, construction phase, and then also additional services. And it should be noted that we are asking for a not to exceed fee. So it's easier for us to budget as we move forward. The additional services, those are if something does come up, the CM would not be able to do that unless it's authorized in writing by the city. We do identify, working relationships, who's the owner's rep, the architect. We talk about some of the other individuals that are involved with that. Definitions we kind of go through, but then we get to the construction management services, and that's really the main point of the scope of services. We do talk about pre-construction services, and I'm not going to go through every one of these because it's a pretty long list. But one of the things as we were going through this, and then we go through construction services as well, as we were putting this together, we really wanted to be as thorough as we could because it is new to the city. And then also a lot of the information on this scope of services can be then used right into the contract. And we are looking at using a city modified AIA contract for the award of the contract. So there's a lot of information there. Closeout services, and then at the end is just some instructions to the firms, what they need to submit. And then at the very end, there is a evaluation team will be put together, and then there's a list of criteria that we'll use to evaluate the submittals, and then bring a recommendation to City Council for award of a contract. So it's a lot of information. Hopefully you had a chance to read through it. We do have 3 or 4 alternatives in front of you. Alternative 1 is to approve the scope of services as is. Alternative 2, approve the scope of services with changes as directed by City Council. 3, do not approve the scope of services, or 4, refer back to staff for further information and review. So I will note also that once this is out, then we will be working with RDG with their scope of services, getting that nailed down, what the cost is, and then hopefully we can actually bring both of those back at near the same time at a future meeting. So, any questions?
Okay.
I have a question, Keith. So I had a chance to spend some time at the high school construction project, and they're in the process of using a construction manager there. And it was interesting for me to learn more about how they use a lean construction methodology.
Yep.
Is that something that is a factor that we're going to be considering in this application process?
We didn't specifically spell that out, but I know most, if not all, of the construction managers use that approach, and I have done the same thing. I've gone up to the high school, and it is really an efficient and effective way to manage the construction. So we did not spell it out in here, but I think that is kind of you'd say almost a standard for construction managers to do business.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, and open up public input. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this item tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Any further questions for staff? Otherwise, I entertain a motion.
Move approval of the scope of services.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 17, staff report regarding aquatic programming.
Yeah. So this really this report is we're not looking for council to take any action. It's more for information purposes. Seen as municipal pool, last day of operation will be February 28th. Building will be taken down sometime in March under the current schedule. So staff has been exploring options, to continue year-round aquatic programming. And in the staff report, we've listed a number of the aquatic programs that we offer year-round. Some of the ones that are year-round, and some of them are just in the summertime, but aqua fitness classes, certification courses, those would be our lifeguard training, lifeguard instructor training, water safety instructor, and so on, CPR, AD, first aid. Do lap swimming, open swim lessons, and then some of them are more just consistent with Furman Aquatic Center. But one of the things, obviously, we won't have an indoor pool, to use. So we have been looking at different community facilities that have a pool, and we kind of list a number of them. I'll go through them in a little bit and give you an update on some things that are happening. But several factors that we're looking at is water depth, water temperature, patron capacity, available time for use, and then potential rental fees. Because some of the facilities that are within the community, they will not be conducive to all of our programs. And most of them could serve some of our programs, but not all of them. So those are things that we are looking at. So with it, and I'll just kind of go through these. So we have had a conversation with the community school district here in Ames, and just in the talking with them was Jerry Peters from the school district. We asked what the availability of the high school pool would be when they opened up in late August, and just to get a little better feel for the pool basin itself. So right now their basin is going to be about 42 inches on one end, and then it starts stepping down, and it steps down, and it steps down, and it eventually gets down to 12 feet on the other end, which is where their diving wells. They're going to have 2 diving boards. But right now, they are proposing that the water temperature is probably going to be about 78 degrees. is what he told us. Right now, municipal pool, when we have swimming lessons, we keep it about 83 to 84. If we do not have swimming lessons going on, it gets put down to about 82 if it's just swim lessons. So it's kind of a compromise. So 78 for swim lessons is pretty cold compared to what we normally have. And the amount of availability right now that they're looking at is their swim teams would have priority. Any the high school swim teams, any other high school activities or school district activities would take priority. And then they do have an arrangement with Ames Cyclone Aquatics Club, ACAC, to use the facility when they're done. So really right now, just in talking with Jerry Peters, is that, there isn't a whole lot of availability for the time when we would need it, because the high school swim teams come in. They generally start in the first part of August with the girls swim team, and then the boys swim team goes until I think end of February, first part of March, and then ACAC pretty much goes year round. So there might be some opportunity there. I asked them what they would be looking at for rental fees, and I was told that right now they don't have a rental fee set, because one of the things that they were not looking at doing is opening up the facility for external use. So he was going to have some conversation within the school district and get back to me. I've not heard back from him yet, because I said I would be curious, if you do open it up, what would it cost us? I did have conversation with Mary Greeley Medical Center with their therapy pool. Not ideal. They have equipment in there. It's small, and they have security concerns getting in and out of the building, and they use it until 8:00, and sometimes on Saturday mornings. But security was an issue, and really not a good option for us as well. The hotel motels, we're having a conversation. It's proving to be a little difficult, because generally when we call, we get somebody at the front desk, and they say, well, we'll get you to the general manager. And then when we finally get to talk to the general manager, then they got to have conversation with the owner. So we're finding it's not a quick one call and try to figure out if we can use it. Again, most of the pools are a little smaller, but some of the pools, some of the hotels, they do open up their pool already for public use, and that's one of the things that we want to understand, and then we can also share that information with our users and let them know where they could go if we aren't able to offer some programming. So Iowa State University, we have a meeting with them scheduled for Friday to look at their facilities. They are very interested in working with us. But until we meet with them and get some of the specifics, we're not sure, but we do think that we will be able to work something out with them. We already use Forker Pool for some aqua classes, and we have done some other things over the years, there as well. So we'll see what happens with that conversation on Friday. Green Hills is another facility that we use right now. We offer a lot of aqua classes throughout the week. We also do offer some parent-child swim classes there. The water, again, the pool isn't super big, but we could offer maybe additional parent-child classes for swim lessons. We could also do maybe some of our younger level swim lessons there. We may have to alter some of the method of how we teach. Because of the depth of that pool, we may have to do a parent-child class, for some of our 3, 4, maybe 5-year-olds. And we did do that during the early stages of the pandemic just to keep people safe. So it is something that we did. So we actually have a meeting with them tomorrow, and right now, we have not been in that facility for about 2 weeks. Because of the number of COVID cases that they had. But right now, looking at we would be able to get back in there starting on Monday. So And then private fitness clubs, we're working to get some conversations there as well, see if there's any opportunity to do that. As far as when would we be able to start, maybe do some programming in some of these facilities, it's hard to say right now, but in some cases, like Green Hills, we might be able to, we have classes obviously through February. We might be able to do some programming as early as March at Green Hills and pick up for some of what we're losing at municipal. As far as ISU, we're not sure yet with that one, but if we can do something, for March, April, May, we will do that. But it may be one of those things where we aren't able to get in there until September for some of those programs. So that's kind of just with the facilities throughout the community. And then some of the things that we looked at too is it's in the staff report are some plan changes to the Furman schedule. One of the things, in the summertime, we always had 4 nights of swim lessons, evening swim lessons at municipal pool. And obviously that won't be there. So we're looking at how do we add additional swim lessons? So we will be doing morning swim lessons at the Aquatic Center. And we want to add some evening swim lessons as well. We looked at the number of admissions that we have on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. All that information is in the staff report. But we did pick Mondays and Wednesdays. We would have open swim only from 1 to 6 p.m. instead of 1 to 8 on those nights. And then we would add actually 3 different time slots of swim lessons during the evening. And then also we would add water walking to the lazy river. And water walking is one of our most requested things that we get. How do we get more water walking? How do we get more water walking? So when there's other information in there, the other thing that we're looking at doing or we're planning is because of the loss of the open swim that we are adding twilight open swims on the second, fourth Mondays of June and July while swim lessons are happening, and that will offset some of the lost time for the open swim. Is it ideal? No, but given the situation that we're in, we're trying to do the best we can, prioritize some of the activities that we have, teaching kids how to swim so they're safe around water is a high priority, and then obviously the health and wellness of our community is another high priority also. So with that, I guess if there's any questions the council has, I'd be glad to answer anything.
Keith, thanks for the thoroughness of this report. I am a little bit intrigued by the fact that we have had, how long has our partnership been with the schools on the municipal pool?
Over 50 years.
So we have a 50-year relationship. And now all of a sudden, there's absolutely no time available to give any time for us when we have a situation where we're without a pool for 2 years. That perplexes me. And there's an equity issue here. There are a lot of families that don't have the resources to take their kids to a club and hire swimming lessons. And so this is an important issue for our community. These city swim lessons are important for our families. So I really appreciate the work you're doing. Perhaps the schools would be willing to reconsider this. The lap swimming is important. The pool is different temperature, and so there's that challenge as well. The other question I had, with any of these facilities, how do we think about liability issues? So for a pool that we own and maintain, we think differently about our own property. But how does that work out if someone is injured in another location?
Yeah, and we have started some conversation with Bill Walton, who's our risk manager, just to have him start, thinking about how do we do this. What we generally do when we use other facilities, and we have done it with Sports Iowa, we've done it with, we do it with the Ames Rec and Fitness for tennis lessons and so on. So when we do these things, it's generally getting a certificate of insurance, getting the city named as an additionally insured, and then we just work through with the facility, lay out what some of the expectations and things. So now pools are going to be a little bit different because there are some issues with the chlorine levels. Is it safe? Is it being maintained? And those are questions that we're asking of the hotels and motels. We already work with, we already have an agreement with Green Hills. We already use ISU Forker. We're not as worried about those facilities because we're already using them. But the hotel motels, those are the ones that we really have to understand. Do they have a CPO, which is a certified pool operator? We have, I think, 3 or 4 of them on our staff that are certified to watch the pool and make adjustments and do all those things. So it's something that we have to have the conversations with the hotel motels. Again, those are really the pools that we're looking at that concern us the most. And until we find some of those pools that might meet some of our needs, which a lot of them won't, we'll have that conversation before we move any further.
I appreciate that. Generally, when we see ourselves as partners in the same team, and every once in a while, the government won't be able to offer particular services, and we have to be flexible. We have to help each other. So, I hope we find a good collegial relationship with Iowa State and with the Ames schools during this couple of years where there's so many families that take advantage of this swimming lesson. So
yeah, and again, that's in the conversation with Jerry Peters that I had. I said, hey, please find out, what the rental fees would be because during the day I don't think they're looking at doing anything, and to offer some lap swimming or to do something that people may not be able to do. Is important. I agree with you. So I'll continue those conversations and see if we can't get to something that works for everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? So the way the staff report reads is that if you're all in agreement with what's being proposed, no action necessary, and we can just move on. All right. Thank you,
Thank
Keith.
you much.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Keith.
All right, moving on to item 18, resolution finding that nomination of the Pi Kappa Alpha fraternity house to National Register of Historic Places meets National Register significance criterion A and C. And council have any questions for staff on this particular item? Or is there anything, Kelly, in particular we need to bring to the council's attention?
I do not.
Any questions?
Kelly, is there a reason that the Historic Preservation Commission voted for criterias A and C instead of just A?
As I understand it from my planner, the secretary to the board, I think they just felt that there was information supporting that as well. It really doesn't matter as long as you meet one criterion, you're eligible. It doesn't give you any other status if you meet all 4 or not. So just meeting the 1 is all that's really necessary.
Okay.
Other questions? All right. I entertain a motion on one of the alternatives.
Move alternative 1.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I'd just like to say that I think this sort of thing allows us to support the Greek system in ways that do not require demolition of buildings. And so allowing them to access funds through national tax credit opportunities and state tax credit opportunities is a good way to support the Greeks.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Burton,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Megan Hanson,
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 19, staff report regarding a request to review zoning requirements for ground floor residential use within a CCR zone property at 4820 Mortensen Road.
Just a brief introduction by staff. So this item came up originally as a comment to Plan 2040. Back in October, you were looking at the draft future land use map, and you received a number of comments on various topics. And the property owner had been following what we were doing and is a unique issue as that they can describe to you about how they operate the property and really whether they could view this more as a residential property than a commercial property. The site was developed historically under CCR zoning, which is really unique to this part of Ames. It doesn't exist in other parts of the city. So CCR zoning was a product of a goal from the last land use policy plan to establish a large commercial node here. So not a small area, but a large amount of commercial to serve West Ames. And then the efficiency of adding housing to that, if that was possible. So meet the commercial goal first is the way I think of it. And then secondly, allow for housing in addition to that. So it was built, I don't remember the year we quoted in the report, but it's about 15 years old from when it was developed. It has some commercial on the ground floor of the buildings. The upper two levels are all residential, and the property owner has been using most of the ground floor that's not currently a commercial tenant for what's described as short-term stay units. Things that are operated to meet essentially our hotel motel definition rather than an apartment definition. And what's really before you tonight is to discuss options if you're interested in any kind of a change in the zoning or the parameters of the zoning to meet the applicant's request, which is really to take those short stay units and make them into a normal household living type of use, which would essentially mean the leases can be longer than they can under the short-term stay parameters. So we gave you a couple of options, and to think about it, you could do a text amendment potentially to alter the standards of how housing and commercial are mixed on a site. If you wanted to consider the site to be more of a residential property, you could think about it as a high-density zoned property. We could go through a land use amendment, consider a rezoning. I think in all of this, you have to think about what do we want on the property? How do we see the site operating into the future? Clearly, the commercial that's there, we as the city think is valuable. I believe the property owner has no intention of changing that commercial use out, even if you did allow for other residential uses. But there would be some things that we would want to secure probably as the city if we loosened up the rules and allowed for residential on the ground floor. If you do change the CCR zone, even though it's a limited amount of properties, there are 2 vacant properties right next door to here. And then there is a built property across the street that has all ground floor commercial with housing above, just like this site. And then there's some other vacant lots to the east on Mortensen. So there's a couple other properties that may be affected if you change the designation. I don't know that it's a significant issue, but it's something that would be part of the consideration or the analysis if we went through that. So with that, Justin Moore is here as well. If you have questions about the site, I know the applicant's present to respond to questions as well.
Questions for staff?
The options you laid out for us, 1 or 2 there. If we were interested, say, in requiring some percentage of affordable units be included as part of this agreement, or I guess trade-off. Does that work better with option 1? The CCR?
So I think it depends on how you look at it. If it's a standard in the zoning ordinance that would apply to all properties, you'd have to figure out how to write that to say, which I'm not sure we could literally distinguish one type of occupant from another, which is what we're saying is you have a household income limit to be in that unit. I'm not sure completely if the zoning ordinance could write that. We would look into that, but that's how it'd have to be written. So it would apply to all of the CCR properties. If that's something that you think is a case-by-case situation, that's more of a contract rezoning approach that you look at when people ask for a rezoning of the property. And if there's something unique to negotiate there, then you do that on a case-by-case basis as part of a rezoning action rather than as a text amendment.
I see. So that's a third option?
Well, the contract rezoning would be something that would apply to option 2. There's
Option
going to be
2.
a step of a land use change and a rezoning to something else. Option 1 is to change the
current zoning.
the standards that apply to the property without changing the zone.
Gotcha.
So Kelly, is the same true if we wanted to reserve a certain portion as commercial with other being residential? Does that work the same way as?
So in that case, it could work the same way. I think the way the way RH is written as well as CCR, you need a site plan to allow for commercial and how the ground floor uses would work. So you can control that through a normal site plan review process and say this square footage is committed to this use and this square footage allowed to be this other use. It wouldn't have to be a contract rezoning. It could be if that was something that's above and beyond that really needed to be dealt with for the site. So in RH, you're not allowed to have commercial if it exceeds 5,000 square feet without council approval. So I think last meeting we talked about the former Mary Kay site. There's a small mixed use building being built there. It has 3,000 square feet of commercial on the ground floor and 8 to 10 apartments in it. You didn't review that building because it didn't get to the 5,000 square foot threshold. This site has, I think, over 30,000 square feet of commercial on it. So it would be subject to a council approval, whether you did a contract rezoning or not, if you went to RH.
Other questions? All right, open up public input, and I have a card from Brent Haverkamp. You introduce yourself and your address, and you may begin.
Good evening, Brent Haverkamp, 4915 Timber Creek Lane. I'm the owner of the property that we're requesting the zoning change on. What I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of a brief history of that project and how we operate it and kind of why I'm asking for the change. I'm not the original developer of the property. The property was developed mostly as a residential property in a commercial zone. The commercial on the property was a failure, and so property went back to the banks, and I bought it out of that foreclosure. And so it had about 70, 80,000 square feet of vacant, really unmarketable commercial space when I purchased the property. So today, the property is about a 330 unit mixed use apartment project. The first floor consists of 129 units that, because we're in this relatively unique CCR zone, we have to operate as short-term housing. So it's a really unique situation. And so we do a variety of things as management to keep our length of housing down. And so it is a difficult thing for us to manage. And then an additional thing is the national lenders typically view short-term housing. They'll call it transient housing. They'll view that as a pretty significant negative. And so properties like this, they won't qualify with the national lenders because it has this transient housing component of it. So, so how we look at it is there's, in my opinion, really don't see any benefit to the residents of Ames, our residents at the property. It's a difficult thing for us to manage, and it's also a difficult thing for us to finance. And so we would like to be similar to our neighbors to the west, or our neighbors to the north, or our neighbors to the southeast. and really operate these apartments on the first floor, very similar to what we would think of as just a conventional lease and a conventional tenant. And so we thought the 2040 plan was an opportunity to do this. Kelly recommended this alternative method. And so that's just a little bit of a history on the project, how we manage it, the challenges that we face. And we'd like to, in our mind, kind of correct a little bit of a quirk or a unique thing in the zoning requirement. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have on that.
I have one question. Could you help us understand why, as commercial spaces, it's unmarketable?
Yeah, so I think part that it's really, it's a deep site, and so there's a lot of commercial that's back in the site, and so it has very little road frontage. It's awful a bit off of that South Dakota Mortensen corner, and so the further you get off from there, and so approximately maybe 25% of the first floor is commercial. All that commercial is up against Mortensen. And once you get off of Mortensen, it's very difficult for us to find tenants that want to kind of traverse through the site. And so the commercial spaces on the site were vacant for several years with, really very little potential on there. So.
Thank you.
So Brent, I have a question. If we were to go with your proposal, what would that do in terms of the number of units that would be available for lease?
Yeah, so it wouldn't change. So we have roughly 335 apartment units on the site. Again, the first floor units, we operate and to keep the length of stay down. And so it would not change the number of units and the number of people on the site at all. Frankly, it would just help us in how we manage and finance the property. It's a bit quirky what we have to do currently to abide by the code section.
So you said you had 129 units on the first floor.
Correct.
And you're not planning on changing the configuration of this?
No. So we don't want to make any changes construction-wise to the site. We don't want to make any changes to the use of the site. The makeup will be the same. We'll just be able to offer conventional leases, which we have difficulty in doing that currently and meeting the code section. So no construction changes, no change in the use of the site, simply be what we would think of as a conventional multifamily property.
And if you had a chance to look at the options that we have for us, what would be your recommendation?
In discussing with Kelly, it seems like the text amendment for the CCR zone is the cleanest to me. I would defer to your very knowledgeable planning and zoning staff, but it seems the CCR zone is really probably just 3 buildings that is in the site and a couple of vacant lots. And so it doesn't affect very many properties. We could have a text amendment to that zoning to allow for this use in a way that council was comfortable with, and that would allow the property to be, a better asset to the community.
And then once that was done, then lenders would be able to see that the status of the units have changed?
Yeah. So month to month and short-term housing is typically not very attractive to a national lender, and they'll just disqualify those. And so this property generally will have to be financed with a local or regional lender. So.
And could you remind us again, which of the properties in the area allow the conventional leasing?
Yeah. So the pink, the RH, is another multifamily property just to the west. And that's just what we would consider is a conventional multifamily site with, apartments on the first floor. And then the FSRM, I actually own that property as well. So that's was originally part of this site, and that was rezoned to Kelly, you'll have to correct, but I think of it as medium density residential.
That's what it is.
Okay, so it's essentially, so that property that I also own, those first floor units can be rented conventionally as well. And then the pink to the north across the street, all of that is conventional high density residential. So really it's consistent. If you go further to the west, those are apartments as well. The first floor are all rented. And so I'm unaware of any other property in the community that's operated as this one is. So really, most everything in this area would have first floor apartments that would be rented conventionally.
Great, thank you.
Out of the 129 short-term housing units, how many would you say are typically filled versus vacant?
We typically will work on pricing to adjust, but 90% occupancy rate would be typical for this property. So 10% vacant. These first floor units will be vacant more often than the other units because of the transient nature of them. So probably a bit higher for those first floor units, perhaps.
When did you acquire the property?
2008.
So when was the last time you tried to market the commercial spaces as commercial spaces?
Yeah, so today there's the spaces on the first floor that are apartments and there's spaces that are commercial. So we market the commercial spaces commercially on an ongoing basis. There's about 30,000 square feet of commercial there. And so we market that on a continual basis as our tenants turn over. And then the residential spaces, we market as residential spaces. And so there's been no conversion of the property, residential to commercial or back and forth. Typically, we find our commercial demand at that property is pretty weak. It wouldn't be super attractional commercial space.
I'm just surprised, given how much development there's been since 2008 in that area. It seems like it would be more desirable.
And Gloria, it's just my opinion. We have some vacant land in that area. I don't know if the zoning contributes to that, but certainly it's more challenging because of, it's commercial only, essentially, unless you want to do, the mixed use as what was originally envisioned for the property that I own.
Your question?
What are your thoughts about reserving some for low to moderate income?
Yeah, so we typically, if you're an apartment guy or a multifamily guy, that would put you in a different category. So, there are certainly income restricted properties. And so, but that's sort of in a different class. And so people that do those types of properties. And then there's what we call just conventional or market rate. And so it would add a complexity to the market. My sense is, given the age of the units, I would be surprised if our rates were much off of, what a moderate income would be. And so I might be trading one amount of paperwork and administration for a different amount, and particularly if it was a required. And I know that I've not operated, income reduced apartments before, but I'm presuming that there's some paperwork involved in that process as well. So I don't know how that affects, the financing, the operation of the apartment. So I really wouldn't be able to speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any sense of how the city would benefit from making this change for you? I know how you benefit from it, but
Clearly, we benefit from it. I mean, in my opinion, a property that is more valuable to the city. It's going to increase the tax base. And so I think by a quirk of zoning, those 129 units are less valuable currently, which Gloria, what that tells me is the market doesn't accept them. There's too many units for this month-to-month and transient nature. And so the market would value those units higher and more people would want to rent them. Therefore, increasing the value, therefore increasing the good to the community.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to address council on this topic? Seeing none, we'll close public input. All right, council. Any further questions for staff? Conversation, discussion?
I would be willing to entertain that option too, because I would be interested in securing some LMI rate housing there. I don't know that it would be calamitous. Maybe more paperwork, but the rates, even if currently they're about moderate income rates, there's no guarantee they would stay that way necessarily. So if we required them to stay that way, then they will. And I think that's a fair trade-off for increasing the value of the property, basically. So the city we're getting something we need, which is dedicated low to moderate income rental housing. Rates aren't that much different, so it shouldn't put the landowner out too much, except the paperwork, admittedly. But that's kind of where I'm thinking, where if it's a trade-off, we would get a little bit of benefit, a thing we want, in addition to helping the property owner.
So have we ever done this before, Kelly?
When we do contract rezoning, I don't think we have. I'm trying to think. I don't know that we've directly negotiated an affordable housing requirement. We've done other requirements about mixed use obligations or some other details along those lines.
I'm absolutely okay with this being a precedent.
Well,
first time thing.
Or
a first time, a pilot or a experiment or, whatever.
But let's think about this. This is an example where the zoning, we have aspirations whenever we create zoning that will have a desired outcome. And most of the time, I think we do a good job with this, but sometimes over time, the zoning doesn't work out as we think.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a situation where it is a quirk. And we've got these units that the property owner can't get traditional financing for. And I think at this point, to take advantage of that, to, in essence, I don't want to use the word extort, but we're sort of squeezing the landlord, the property manager. We're taking from the property owner something that really we just need to make the zoning here consistent with the other units. I have strong concerns about the propriety of requiring this to be a different type of usage.
I'm not saying all of it. Maybe a quarter of units was my suggestion to start, and it could even be less. There's 100 and something units. It wouldn't have to be all of them, right? So I'm not talking about the full number, just so we're clear on that. So a proportion.
And it does sound like, if I understood correctly, that 90% of the units are rented at any one time. And so it's not as if they're sitting there empty at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so asking for something in return isn't the same as saying, oh gosh, that whole floor is sitting empty and they're not getting any return on their investment.
But none of us up here have any idea what's involved in the management of these of this task. And so we're being very quick to impose that burden on a property manager when we don't understand this.
Well, there'd be time. We would initiate a set of things to come back to us, right? And so
Yeah, so under option 2, if that was what was approved, the applicant would be applying for things. So if they decide it doesn't work for them or they're proposing how to respond to whatever the motion is, that would be part of their application process. We're not doing it for them. It would be incumbent on the applicant to move forward as we would with any other, as I describe it, development project at that point.
May I suggest that this really wasn't included in the staff report?
Yes, it was. It most certainly was. Staff comments, it says, there's a part where it says, allowing for, where was it?
Last paragraph. I think.
It was in there, yeah.
Supporting affordable housing would be
Yeah.
an example of city
Changes to
benefit.
ground floor standards supporting affordable housing.
I'm sorry.
So that-
What I meant was that in the option 2.
But I mean, it was suggested as an option that we
Right.
could consider. And staff brought it to us, in fact,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
as an option. So
I'm not, what I was going to suggest is that the applicant was caught either unawares or really wasn't prepared to talk about that, in lieu of saying, let's go ahead and do option 2 with this requirement, would be appropriate to direct staff to engage in conversation with some kind of direction. And if they're not interested in doing it, then that would change things altogether. I mean, if they don't want, then basically they may withdraw their request to make the change.
well, I think that's what option 2 would do, basically. Like Kelly said, they wouldn't apply, or they would apply in a different fashion. I mean, I'm not trying to force someone,
I
force something
understand.
down someone's throat, but I think,
Well, we sort of are.
no, they're operating, they can operate as they are now. Their financing from national lenders is not that's a business decision on their part, but they're able to operate as they are now. And all the other stories, other than the first story, they can finance just fine, right? Because those are not transient residential.
But the financing is for the entire building. They don't finance floor by floor.
Well, but there's 2 different classes of use, so it makes them all.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the property manager, but the financing would be for the entire building. And what he's told us tonight is that this is a challenge for financing this.
But it wouldn't hurt their financing to make them low to moderate income, right? Because it's not.
How would you know that?
Well, I mean, it's not defined as transient. I mean,
Well, maybe we should ask Brent that question. I don't know if he would know that, since this is not an area of his work. So here's my challenge, Bronwyn. So we've never, in my 8 years, had a situation where there was a quirk in the zoning and we fixed it to make things right. I mean, if we had a crystal ball, we would never have done this in the past. We've never taken advantage. Oh, here's someone we're going to take it. They want to put things the way the other properties are. And now let's sort of jump on this opportunity. We've never done this.
I don't mean it to sound like we're trying to take advantage of someone.
But we
As
are.
As a city, we are asked sometimes to, in this case, help a property owner achieve the maximum or a greater value for their property. And we often ask, what the public good is for a change that we're being asked to make. So we're being asked to make a change to help them see better value for their property. I think it's fair to ask if there's a public good that we can maximize in exchange for that. So, I mean, I'm all right delaying it and asking some more questions if that makes everyone more comfortable.
Why don't you go ahead and, is there anything besides this, is there any other comments or discussion? Otherwise, we'll get a motion on the table. Is there anything else people want to make a comment on regarding, in addition?
Well,
Make a motion.
Make a motion.
I'll make
Go
my
ahead.
comment after that.
Can I say something before Bronwyn makes the motion? Because my concern, I agree that I think we should get something out of this. And we keep talking about affordable housing, so that seems likely. But the reason this zone or this area was zoned the way it is, if I understand correctly and remember the situation from the mid-2000s, was that we were growing to the west and this was going to be a commercial node. Now it has not succeeded as that, but we are continuing to grow to the west. And if we change this zoning, then where is the new commercial property? And, Is it possible that we are simply catching up, as we did in Somerset, when it took so long for that area to develop the way it was supposed to? I am hesitant to say we should allow all of those spaces to be converted officially through zoning to long-term residences and lose potential commercial space that is currently available. So another thing to think about would be, is there a percentage of that space that could be reserved under RH zoning for commercial? So that's my only comment on
Was that
it.
a question for staff?
It's not, no, I asked my question about whether that could be accomplished the same way. I mean, I think it can be
Sure.
accomplished, but
Same way.
so is that something that we're interested in? If you were going to make a motion to pursue what you're interested in, that might be something that could be thrown into that discussion as another topic.
Okay.
And my final comment on this. This is actually a sort of important decision tonight. And Bronwyn, you're right. This is a precedent because we make decisions almost every meeting where people are coming to us and wanting us to help them solve something, a problem with their property. And by and large, we do that. And the goal is to figure out, how do we make this right for these people? How do we help them? Never once in my time here have we made the decision that our criteria is going to be, how are we going to get something out of this? This is new territory. And I'm trying to imagine how we apply this in a brave new world when applicants come to us and they want to make improvements to their property, and the criteria becomes, how do we get something out of this? That's not the role of the city government. Let's make the motion and take a vote.
Well, I feel like that's every urban revitalization area we do that. So that I disagree with that. That's a
different situation.
It's getting public good for incentivizing the redevelopment of property. That's the same
Go
philosophy.
ahead and make the motion, please.
Well, I mean, I guess I think option 2 is the way I want to go, because I think it will allow staff to have those further discussions and they can bring back options. So I would move option 2 with, I don't know. I guess Kelly, do you have a suggestion on this for?
Technically, option 2 is to authorize someone to apply for a future land use map change. If that's approved, then you move into the rezoning step. So if you have an intent, I'm glad the applicant can hear your ultimate intent behind the motion, but it's a little bit of the cart before the before the horse to talk about what a zoning change to RH is or isn't if we haven't even made the land use designation change yet.
Sure.
So really option 2 is 2 steps.
Yeah.
One is the land use change. I assume it would go to RN5, which is our new designation for RH. If that happens, then they apply to go to an RH zoning district, and that's where we would talk about, what are the nonconformities on the site? Is there anything that needs to be addressed as it relates to becoming an RH property?
Does that already mean the contract zoning comes into place?
And contract rezoning has to be part of a rezoning. We don't do it as part of a land use map change. It's related to the rezoning process directly.
But do you want to even change it if you don't know you have, shouldn't we discuss it first with the developers?
Yeah, that's my concern. I don't want to.
Well, then we'll change it to RH and we will die
and
there.
give the expectation that we're going to do one thing if the majority of council is leaning
Like
towards a
I said,
certain
I think
way.
it's very beneficial
No, I know.
for intent to be known tonight.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm fine having a conversation about alternative things that we've discussed tonight. I will just say, and this is not intended to be disrespectful to any landlords in town, but not every landlord can be an affordable housing landlord. It is more complicated than just renting to people who have a certain income level. And I don't even know, as a city, how would we go about holding a landlord accountable to this requirement, Kelly?
Well, I think we'd have to rely upon some kind of annual report because we would not be involved in clearance of that household.
Right.
So that would be probably my expectation. Is that somehow there's an annual report about who you've qualified for whichever units there are. So similar manner to what we don't directly do that for IFA units or for Iowa Finance Authority units. But when we just did the Windsor Point project about a month ago, when they committed to do affordable housing, we wrote into our agreement that the city had the ability to review those because we put in a little bit different language than what Iowa Finance Authority would want. So we had the right to review their records.
That are submitted to IFA.
Yeah. Now this project wouldn't have to submit to IFA.
Exactly.
They would just have to keep records on file, subject to city inspection whenever, on an annual basis, if that's what we wanted to do.
Well, that sounds reasonable. I do want to give time for folks to think through this. And I don't want to jump into something that's a mistake. Other cities have certainly done this. It's not new territory. It might be for us, but it's not in general. So I would move to direct staff to talk with the landowner about the concept of a contract rezoning that would include some percentage of units set aside as affordable. I'll leave that percentage up to the staff to discuss.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded.
So can I clarify if that's the motion that passes, there's no action other than for staff to converse with the property owner?
Yeah, and I guess bring
We'll
it
have to
back
report
to
back.
a
And then
future.
staff would report back.
Yeah, exactly.
With our thoughts.
Report back, yeah.
So presumably you would report back and it would essentially be this same report with an addendum of some sort about
think
the
so.
conversation. And then we would decide
Whether to move forward or not.
whether we just want to move forward with option 2 with no stipulations or some alternative.
Or no change, right?
And would some commercial still remain under this option?
Yeah, I think it's a given. Brent said the same thing. That 30,000 that's occupied now, everybody agrees that's going to stay regardless of how this comes out.
Okay.
Give or take, 30,000 is a round number. So.
The other thing I would offer on this is that one of the things that guides us in our zoning is the use of properties in the area. And so we have properties to the west and to the north and to the southeast that have a similar zoning. And so we have an opportunity tonight to fix a mistake, but not to take advantage of a mistake. That's what this vote is about.
Anything else?
I guess I would say we should probably be also thinking long-term, and the use of this property as commercial may be more valuable in the future, given development to the west and south.
Okay. Everyone understand the motion? Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 I'm sorry, I need to try. Is it Anita?
Oh.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Gloria, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
I was an aye.
All right, motion carried 4-2.
Okay, so report back to the city council, discussions with the property owner. Okay, got it.
All right. Thank you. All right, moving on. Item 20, request for proposals regarding small lot industrial development subdivision, possessing tax increment financing. Justin? Or Kelly?
I'll take it.
or both?
We're reporting that we received one proposal and outline some of the things that are in the proposal. We didn't give it to you to review. Staff hasn't completed our assessment. So for tonight, we're reporting out we had one proposal that was agreed upon in the process, and we're looking for direction to proceed. If council's not interested in it, then we would not proceed any further from this point. But that's all we're doing tonight is reporting out and getting direction to proceed.
Questions for staff?
Kelly, were there other people who showed up for the information meeting at all? Or is it all one developer? Just
we had so we held a virtual an online informational meeting
And we did have a few attendees there who asked a couple of questions. So yeah, I think there were 2 or 3 that were actually online.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions for staff? Open up public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to address council on this topic tonight?
Good evening, Chuck Winkleblack, Hunziker Companies, 105 South 16th Street. I sent you an email. It was late today, so I don't know if you had a chance to look through my comments or not. But I think we're really close to having, I think Kelly and I have not had, and Justin have not had a chance to talk in person. We exchanged some emails last week, but I just wanted to make the one clarification that I tried to set out in my email is that I was not requesting specific tax abatement on the large lots. I just thought that there was, if we had someone that under the current state code that could qualify for industrial, if it was somebody that was a user that qualified under our current state code, I didn't want to preclude our development from having that, but certainly was not asking up front to approve those non type of uses, not trying to get a tax abatement on these large lots, carte blanche, I guess. And the other thing is, you know, when we talked about the difference in the spec building, and this was again some just kind of not anecdotal, but conversations that Kelly and I had about if the developers were to put forth the money for the development rather than the city doing that the city would not be as likely to have the same level of requirements because the city wasn't expending as much of the money up front, that we would be expending the money and then waiting for that money to come back as taxes were paid. So that's why I had a little bit different. And quite honestly, the other part was just trying not to, as we've learned and been through some of the things on South Bell, is trying to have us not to have some of the discussions that we had before and maybe have learned some things going through that. So hoping that we could find a compromise. We tried to match the RFP, but I think if you'll remember the night that we talked about the RFP, I sat here and said, you know, there are a few things looking through the context of that I wasn't crazy about, and had hoped that we could continue the discussion as we went through it. And so I think that's why we're here. And again, I think we're not very far off. And the other thing that I tried to mention in my email was if we do the infrastructure and keep the Dayton, the road improvement part of that, the process will go much quicker. If you have to do a public bidding, a public letting, we'll be lucky to get it done this year, and it will cost more. I know John left, but I think the city projects, the stuff that goes with city projects costs more. So we believe what we've proposed is a win-win. We feel like it's a significant need in the marketplace, and we'd like to capitalize on it and have something happen this year. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Close public input. Questions for staff? Is there a motion?
Move alternative 1.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, council staff has asked to pull item 21. Apparently, they're still working on finalizing the developers agreement, so that item has been pulled. We'll move on to item 22.
So just if I could, Mr. Mayor, I think it was very late this afternoon. We did receive the security that was asked for. The agreement and the language had some incorrect references. So we think it's a very quick turnaround, but it was not ready for your approval tonight. So we think you might see this very quickly here on one of your upcoming agendas.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item 22, hearing on proposal for City of Ames to lease its right, title, and interest to property locally known as 205 South Walnut to Heartland Senior Services for a period of 50 years. This has been continued from January 11th, 2022, and we would like a motion to continue the hearing to February 8th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 23, hearing on proposed text amendment to modify the planned unit development overlay district standards to allow for small commercial components to districts.
So as you recall, this was at the request of a property owner. The Bergeson family is pursuing a PUD that they've submitted for, but it has not yet made it through the public hearing process. And they had an interest in establishing a bit of a commercial node that didn't really fit the parameters of our current allowances. They had kind of a unique vision for their project. And City Council agreed that the PUD, which is a new tool and would not affect existing developments, was the appropriate way to address their interest. So we think we've put together a pretty straightforward allowance for this. Everything would be subject to City Council approval as is anything in a PUD. It's a rezoning process. So if we're looking at that in the future, the master plan would need to identify a goal or an intent of having commercial. We need to evaluate how it fits into the overall plan. There are restrictions on use, so it's not truly commercial zoning. It's not HOC zoning where there's a really wide range of uses. It is narrowly confined down to your normal restaurant, entertainment, trade, retail, and office uses. Those terms mean something in the zoning ordinance. We want to be really clear. There's attachments that kind of explain what those uses are. So it's not carte blanche to be whatever kind of commercial thing you want to be. For example, you can't have a gas station. Things that really are not likely to be compatible with single family or other residential properties, those things would be precluded. But overall, we think it's a good addition to the PUD overlay. I think it allows for someone that has a unique vision to propose something that could be kind of interesting or neat. And if it's all controlled as one project, it probably has a pretty good likelihood of being compatible and successful versus just kind of random hodgepodge zoning, which may or may not allow for an integrated use into a neighborhood. So we support the text amendment and open any questions or comments.
All right, declare the public hearing on this proposed text amendment to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council? Hector?
Hello, I think this is an awesome text amendment. I am very in favor of allowing restaurant, entertainment, retail trade, and retail trade general and offices in these developments. And I would actually encourage the council to consider amending the residential zones to allow this type of development so that we could have, neighborhood restaurants, corner stores, etc., that would allow, a kind of vibrancy in the community that people could walk to. Thank you.
Thank you, Hector. Anybody else? Declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance. Or actually, well, I'd like to have a motion on one of the alternatives, if you would, please. It's more specific.
Move alternative 1.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Thank you.
So I have a question. So why wouldn't we, in this is a conceptual plan over 200 housing units. Why not require the developer to have low and moderate income housing in this development? While we're at it, why not do that?
We're not rezoning any property tonight. That can be a question that comes up when the PUD overlay is brought forward for the property. So right now they're annexed to the city. They've proposed rezoning. We haven't made it through the hearing process to talk about that.
So if we wanted to get something out of this developer, we could do that at the PUD level.
So if you want to negotiate a contract rezoning agreement, that is still on the table for the property because we have not gone through rezoning yet for the property.
Perfect. Thanks.
Roll call, please.
Rollins.
Aye.
Warrior.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Judy Hansen.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
All right, moving on to item 24, hearing on the 2021-2022 Pavement restoration slurry seal. Anyone have any questions for staff? Declare the public hearing to be open on this project. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this? Seeing none, close public hearing, entertain a motion on resolution accepting reported bids, approving final plan specifications, and awarding the contract to Fort Dodge Asphalt Company of Fort Dodge, Iowa, in the amount of $255,733.75.
Move the resolution.
Second.
You move second, roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Moving on to item number 25, hearing on City Hall parking lot expansion. Any questions for staff? Declare a public hearing to be open on this project. Anyone interested in addressing council on this item? Seeing none, declare a public hearing on this project to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution accepting reported bids, approving final plan specifications, and awarding the contract to All Star Concrete LLC of Johnston, Iowa, in the amount of $306,300.56.
So moved.
Second.
Move to second. Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And moving on to item 26, hearing on the 2021-2022 asphalt street pavement improvements, Opal Drive, Opal Circle, Harcourt Drive, Turquoise Circle, and Tapa Hollow Road. Any questions for staff? All right, open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution accepting reported bids, approving final plan specifications, and awarding the contract to Manass Inc. of Ames, Iowa, in the amount of $2,133,380.02.
So moved.
Second.
Move to second, and thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 27, hearing on the 2021-2022 Seal Coat Street pavement improvements and 2021-2022 Water System Improvement Program, Stafford Avenue, East 13th Street to South End. Any questions for staff? Hearing none, declare the public hearing on this project to be open. Anyone want to address council on this one? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution accepting reported bids, approving final plan specifications, and awarding the contract to Manass Inc. of Ames, Iowa, in the amount of $990,785.14.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 28, hearing on 2021-2022 traffic signal program, University Boulevard and South 4th Street. Any questions for staff? Declare the public hearing on this item to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this? Declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding the contract to Voltmer Inc. of Decorah, Iowa, in the amount of $293,231.41.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And item 29, public hearing on 2020-2021 South Dayton improvements. Questions for staff? Declare the public hearing to be open on this project. Anyone who wants to address council?
Hello.
Hector.
Reading the application and like the stuff that was given to the DOT and just the project in general, it seems like this project is designed to increase capacity of the roadway in order to respond to traffic projections of increased traffic. What this seems to be a strategy of the city wants there to be increased traffic as an increased roadway use because we're developing more, we're creating more industrial space, etc. But our response to the projected increased traffic that we want to have is to widen the road. The thing is, though, it seems if one would follow that to its logical conclusion, then as we continue to develop, as we continue to have more intense and more awesome industrial activity, we would have to continue widening the road, and eventually we won't be able to widen it anymore. So it's ultimately unsustainable. Plus, every time we widen the road, it'll take more money. So my thought is, why don't we, instead of widening the road, we kind of wait it out, see what happens. If we have a severe traffic situation, then we see how we can use the road more efficiently. For example, maybe we can create a truck-only lane that would then, take some of the industrial traffic. I'm not sure. Just perhaps we want to wait and see before we commit things to, based on predictions that we don't know necessarily will come true.
Thank you.
Hector, you're the first person who spoke in one of these hearings in years. So regardless of my thoughts on your comments, just thank you for showing up to talk in a hearing.
Declare the public hearing on this item to be closed, and I will make a comment, Hector. We have gotten emails from people who have complained about the tremendous congestion that does exist in that area, and this project actually is in response to repeated requests and also a safety issue that exists in that area because people trying to get through that intersection. So I appreciate your comments, but it's not just a matter of trying to increase that. And also the DOT is very concerned about safety on Highway 30 and the backing up of traffic that can occur on 30 eastbound in particular. I mean westbound. And so we do appreciate your coming and offering feedback, but that's kind of what's driving this project. So thank you. Entertain a motion on resolution accepting reported bids, approving final plan specifications, and awarding contract to All Star Concrete LLC of Johnston, Iowa, in the amount of $696,037.03.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Dee Hanson.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 30, first passage of revised ordinance establishing new ward and precincts. Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as I said in my memo, the Secretary of State's office caught one little mistake in our ordinance, and I am thoroughly impressed by the staff person at the Secretary of State's office who apparently read through the entire ordinance with a map and going through it. But in precinct 19, we said go west along the channel of College Creek when it should have said east. And so this is just an ordinance to fix that mistake.
Any questions for Mark? Entertain a motion on first passage of revised ordinance establishing new wards and precincts.
Move on first.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Corey.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Dee Hanson.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Thank you. And Mark has asked for council to consider suspending the rules and having both second and third readings and adoption tonight. So is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Roll call.
Junk.
Aye.
Dee Hanson.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion on second passage.
So moved.
Second and third, right?
Can we do second and third?
Yeah.
Do you want them together?
Entertain a motion on second and third readings and adoption as requested.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Dee Hanson.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Entertain a motion on second passage of ordinance rezoning 23959 580th Avenue.
Move on second.
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 Roll call.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Dee Hanson.
Aye.
And staff is requesting waiving the rules and having third reading tonight. Entertain a motion on waiving the rules or suspending the rules.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Roll call.
Barton.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Dee Hanson.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion on third passage and adoption.
Move on third.
Second.
Roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Dee Hanson.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4453, revising the standards for detached garages and accessory buildings and non-conforming structures.
Oops, move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Roll call.
Moriarty?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Edie Hanson?
Aye.
Batchor?
Aye.
Barton?
Aye.
Rollins?
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4454, changing the name of Squaw Creek Drive to Stonehaven Drive.
Move on third.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Jones?
Aye.
Edie Hanson?
Aye.
Batchor?
Aye.
Barton?
Aye.
Rollins?
Aye.
Moriarty?
Aye.
Thank you. And item number 34, entertain motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4455, amending the parking regulations to incorporate the renaming of Squaw Creek Drive to Stonehaven Drive.
Move on third.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Edie Hanson?
Aye.
Batchor?
Aye.
Barton?
Aye.
Rollins?
Aye.
Moriarty?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to disposition of communications to council. We have 3 different communications this evening. First is a letter from Latif Faisal, Chair of the Stark County Board of Supervisors, regarding priorities for Ames Urban Fringe Plan renewal and amendment following the adoption of Ames Plan 2040. Steve?
If I may, I think what we'd like to do is, I don't know if we've told you this, but perhaps we eliminate the February workshop, February 15th. We'd like to schedule a workshop to accomplish 3 things on the 15th. One would be to go over our tasks that we're going to have to develop for your individual goals. At the same time, we want to review the planning and housing work plan. Remember that, because that ties into your task and goals. And thirdly, we'll have Kelly go over the whole process we're going to use to discuss the fringe plan. So we're not going to get into these particular details. He will probably articulate our position as a staff, what we like to see in renegotiating the fringe area plan, and then also outline the process we use to get into these issues. So that's how I'd like to move ahead with that.
So do you want a motion to put that on the
Well,
February
first,
15th
February
agenda?
15th, you want to do that?
Or we can just do is make a motion to put it on a future agenda,
Yeah.
and then we'll schedule it to be on the 15th then.
Okay, I would move that we put that item on a future agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Next is memo from Mark on legal issues regarding the request for funding on the Ames History Museum's expansion project. May I suggest that what I could do is I could forward that to Ames History Museum and highlight the recommendation or the advice that is offered by the attorney. Okay. Third is letter from Margaret A.L. Bloom from the Annex Group regarding a tax abatement request for a proposed affordable housing development in Ames. Question becomes is does council want to get a memo from staff on this one relative to the request, get some feedback on that?
Yeah, I'd refer to staff for a memo.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
So, could we walk through what the goal of this would be?
Affordable housing in Hayden's Preserve.
But what are we hoping to obtain from the staff memo on this?
Well, the request was to consider approving potential tax abatements. I think you want staff to kind of give some
Yeah.
input on
Options.
pros and cons, or
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Know a little bit more about the.
Get more information on that.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's my understanding. Is that true,
Mhm.
Rachel? You look more? Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of just carte blanche saying, sure, we'll go ahead and do it. All right, those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Council comments. Trevor, welcome back.
Hello. Yes. Last day I met with the Speaker of our Senate, and we started working more on that committee I was talking about, to be named the Local Affairs Committee. And we started writing that up, and so I'm going to send out some more stuff probably after tonight's meeting to get some more feedback on that. So you can look for that. And I think that's all. So thank you.
Thank you. Bronwyn,
Nothing for me tonight, thank you.
Rachel?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Nothing
Amber?
for me. Nothing for me tonight,
Jim?
thanks.
Nothing.
I don't know whether I have something tonight or not.
Okay.
Hector, during public comments, brought up a topic that actually appeared in an email that we received from the Ames Climate Action Team. And so it didn't get into our council communications, but it was brought up at the public forum. So I don't know whether we want to wait on me making any motion about this until council has a chance to review that letter. Or,
if you would, we got a lot of meetings coming up. We got one on Friday afternoon and we got several next week. So,
well, so I just want to make sure that we get that email into whatever the next packet will be for us to review.
Okay.
This is the letter from Jerry Neal on January 24th.
Yes, and it's about the CIP, which is why I assume we got it now. But I want to make sure council has an opportunity to read it over, and so I'll wait on making any kinds of motions about it.
all right. I'll ask Diane to get that included for the one that's coming up this Friday.
Thank you. That's all I've got.
Thank you. All right. I think that we're going to need to go into closed session. So who wants to ask Mr. Mark
Mark, do we have legal justification to go into closed session?
Yes, you do. Iowa Code Section 20.17 subsection 3 allows council to go into closed session to discuss collective bargaining strategy.
Okay. Is there a motion to go in closed session?
Move we go into closed session.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Measure,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Corey Aaron,
Aye.
Jump,
Aye.
Judy Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll be going into closed session.
All the firefighters watching at home.
Yep.
All right, we are back in open session and entertain a motion on resolution ratifying the contract with Ames Professional Firefighters Local 625 of the International Association of Firefighters.
So moved?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Roll call.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
And I had an interesting, before we do that, we had an interesting.
I'll retract that.
Yeah, thank you. Just thinking that it might be appropriate to start doing a motion in a second and then a vote to adjourn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's more or less to try and to set a precedent that we don't get in a situation where someone can move to adjourn and then the chair can go ahead and just gavel out. There's some things that have gone on in other councils. And I think just more or less, while we're still all tremendously compatible, working together, being civil, I think it's just starting a new policy. So anyway, not that we necessarily need to, but it's not going to hurt. So you move to adjourn.
Move we
There's a second?
adjourn.
Second.
All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.